Hi, everyone. I want to go ahead and begin reading part 4 of Julie of the Wolves. Our little update with Blueberry. He's doing pretty well. He likes visiting me whenever I'm in the office. I think he misses you guys because he definitely comes to the side of the tank whenever someone walks in the room. Okay, so Julie of the Wolves, part 4. Yesterday, my ex, she was trying to figure out how to talk with with the dogs, trying to figure out the language. So she was pretending to roughhouse as with a puppy. She even learned how to call home so that the wolves would come home. So, as I just pull up where we were at with Julie of the Wolves. Okay. And the last thing we also know is that she also was able to touch the lead wolf under his chin. She was able to get close enough to do that. And he affectionately said, okay, he's kind of starting to accept her as part of the pack. Okay. The puppies may not have been eating, but certainly Amarok would have to bring Jello some food. He had been home all night. Stepping into the sunlight, she put on her tights, danced a moment, and then pulled on her furs. Leaning over the pond, she saw in the glassy water of the hollows of her cheeks. She was pleased, for she looked almost like the Gusak girls in the magazines and movies, thin and gaunt, not moon-faced like an Eskimo. Her hair! She leaned closer to the tundra looking glass. Her hair was a mess. Pressing it into place with her hands, she wished she had taken Daniel's wedding brush and comb with her. They lay unused in the corner of a table drawer in the house at Barrow. Quickly she climbed the frost heave, lay down, and looked at the wolves. There was no meat to be seen. The 3 hunters were stretched out on their sides, their bellies extended with food. Jello was gone. Of course, she said to herself, he had been relieved of his duties and had backtracked the hunters to the kill. She winced, but she had been so certain that today she would eat. So, I won't, she said to herself, and that's that. My ex knew when to stop dreaming and be practical. She slid down the heave, brushed off her parka, and faced the tundra. The plants around the pond had edible seeds, as did all of the many grasses. There were thousands of crane fly mosquito larvae in the water, and the wildflowers were filling, if not very nourishing. But they were all small and took time to gather. She looked around for something bigger. Her black eyes were alert as several Lapland longspurs darted overhead. They might still have young in their nests. Staying on one side of the heave so the wolves would not see her two-leggedness, she skipped into the grass. The birds vanished. Their dark pointed wings were erased from the sky as if they had sensed her deadly purpose. My ex crouched down. Kapujin had taught her how to hunt birds by sitting still and being patient. She crossed her feet and blended into the plants, still as a stone. Presently, a grass blade trembled, and Mayak saw a young bird fluttering its wings as it begged to be fed. A brown lark-like parent winged down and stuffed its open beak. Another youngster begged, and the parent flew to it. Unfortunately, the second little bird was so far from the first that Mayax knew they were out of the nest and impossible to catch. She shifted her attention to the snow buntings. A movement in the sky above the horizon caught her attention, and she recognized the pointed tail and black head of a jaeger. She knew this bird well, for it hunted the shore and tundra of Nunavak Island. A bold seabird, it resembled its close relative, the gull, but was not a fisher. The jaeger preyed upon lemmings, small birds, and occasionally carrion. Mayax wondered what prey it was hunting. 3 more jaegers joined the first, circled close together as if over a target, then dropped out of the sight below the horizon. "The wolf kill!" she fairly shouted. "They're sharing the wolf kill!" Jumping to her feet, she lined up the spot where they had disappeared, with a patch of brown lichens in the distance, and ran with joy along the invisible line. When she had gone a quarter of a mile, she stopped and looked back. The endless tundra rolled around her, and she could not tell which frost heave was which. "Oh no!" she cried. She turned around and laboriously searched out the plants crushed by her feet. Near a pool, she lost all sight of her steps, and then with relief recognized an empty lemming nest, a round ball of grass that she had kicked open. She pounced on it, saw a flower she had trampled on, and ran up the heave to it. From the top, she looked across the distance to her own precious house. She reminded herself not to be so careless again. "One can get lost out here," she said aloud. My ex flopped down in the grass to rest. Her hand touched a patch of Arctic peas. They were tiny but numerous. She took off her boot, then her sock, and filled its toe with the vegetables. When all were harvested, she swung the sock over her shoulder and, striding joyously, rounded her pond and plunked the peas in her pot. She rolled them around with her fingers, and they rattled musically. She rolled them again and made up words to fit her rhythm. Peas that go tink, peas that go tot, peas that will never grow outside my pot. The puppies yapped, and Silver ran across the tundra. She leaped with grace, her fur gleaming like metal. Then she swept into a dip in the landscape and vanished. Up from the horizon rose the Jaegers, announcing that Silver had gone to the kill. Clutching the cooking pot to her breast, Myax excitedly waited to see her bring back meat for the pups. The Jaegers circled. The longspurs tumbled on their wings, and at last Silver came home. Her mouth was empty. "I just don't understand," she said to the pups. "What is keeping you alive?" Putting down her pot, she went to her lookout to try to solve the riddle. Silver came up the long slope, gave the grunt whine that summoned the pups, and Kapu ran to meet her. She pulled back her lips in a smile and nosed him affectionately. Then Kapu stuck his nose in the corner of her mouth. She arched her back, her neck rippled, and she choked up a big mound of meat. Kapu set upon it with a snarl. "So that's it," said Myax. "The meat's in the belly basket. Now what do I do?" Kapu let Sister share the meal with him, but not Zing, Zat, and Zit, as Myax had dubbed the three tawny puppies, who had little personality as yet. Zing rushed over to the resting Silver and cuddled up against her. He rammed his nose against her teats and, taking one in his mouth, ravenously nursed. Silver tolerated this for a moment, then growled. He did not let go, and she snapped at him. He pulled away, but when she stretched out, he dove back into her belly fur again. With a loud bark, she rolled onto her stomach and cut off her milk from him. Zing got up, walked over to Amarok, and stuck his nose in the corner of his mouth. Amarok regurgitated food. The secret of the fat pups was out. They were being weaned from mother's milk to well-chewed and partially digested food. They might eat food from the belly basket for weeks before they were brought chunks of meat that Myax could share. And so she went out into the grasses again to look for buntings. Soon, Silver and Nails trotted off in the direction of the kill. Having fed the puppies, they were now feeding themselves. Myax cautiously peered around the heave. Jello had not gone with them, yet he had been to the kill. He would have food in his belly basket. When the Jaegers arose into the air, she picked up the pot and climbed once again to the top of her frost heave. Getting to her hands and knees, she gave the grunt whine call. "Look at me, I'm nice," it said. Jello strode toward her. So pushed around was he by Silver, so respectful of Amarok and even Nails, that he was excited by a voice more humble than his own. He even lifted his tail and head higher than Myax had ever seen him do, and acting like the boss wolf, loped up her frost heave. Curious Kapu trotted behind. As Myax scurried to meet Jello, he hesitated, growled softly, and urinated. "Don't be scared," she said and whimpered. He circled closer. Quickly rising to her knees, grunting the note of friendship, she slipped her hand over his head and clasped the top of his nose firmly in her fingers. I'm boss, she said as his tail and head went down in deference to the symbol of leadership. She started to slip her hand in the corner of his mouth, but jerked away. Then Kapu, as if he understood what my ex wanted, swept up to Jello and nuzzled his mouth. Jello heaved, opened his jaws, and deposited food on the ground. I'll live! I'll live! My ex cried jubilantly as Jello turned, put his tail between his legs, and raced back to the other pups. Kapu sat down and watched with wrinkled forehead as she scooped the meat into the pot. When she had retrieved every morsel, she gently closed her lips on the bridge of his nose. His tail wagged respectfully, and he gazed softly into her eyes. Kapu, she whispered, we Eskimos have joking partners, people to have fun with, and serious partners, people to work and think with. You and I are both. We are joking, serious partners. He wagged his tail excitedly and blinked. And that's the best of all. She reached out to hug him, for his eyes were mellow and his fuzz irresistible. But he was like water and slipped through her hands. On two knees in one hand, holding the pot with the other, my ex hobbled toward her camp. Kapu bit her heel softly and she glanced over her shoulder. His head was cocked and his tail swished slowly. What are you saying now? She asked. He gave the grunt whine for attention. Of course, she was his big sister, and he wanted to play. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out a mitten, and before she could flash in front of his nose, he had leapt, cut it, and was pulling and shaking her whole arm and torso with incredible strength. My ex let go lest she spill her meat, and Kapu rolled head over heels into the lichens. Taking a firm grip on the mitten, he flattened his ears in spirited fellowship, dashed down the slope and up to his den. There he turned to see if she was following. Bring back my mitten, she called. I need it. He flashed the wolf smile of apology, shook the mitten, and romped into the midst of his brothers. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for today. Thank you for joining me for part 4 of Julie of the Wolves. I will talk to you later today on our Google Hangout meeting. I'll see you at 10.